Sometimes, when I get up here and I feel a little nervous, I just pretend you're all houseplants. Do you guys want to hear a sexy little secret? I have epilepsy. Which means I'm a human vibrator. Oh yeah, you just lie there and I do all the fucking work! So I told this joke about 2 years ago, and at the time I was 2 years seizure-free, which means for 4 years I didn't have any seizures, which was awesome. And I owe that completely to CBD oil. Yes. Yeah, that stuff your mom is giving your dog for his arthritis, that's been keeping me still. But about a month ago, I had another seizure, which was pretty scary, but I thought, I'm gonna talk about it tonight because it's a very weird thing to have epilepsy. When you have a seizure, like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what my body's doing, or I don't know anything at all, which I guess is kind of a good thing because I would just be like, this is fun. But I have to rely on strangers to tell me what I've done. Like, I don't know if I'm doing dark magic or something. I have to go to strangers and be like, hey, remember me? Do you mind telling me what happened last night? Like I'm some blackout drunk. And they'll be like, yeah, we saw you were on the curb outside of Wawa. And you were crying because you're so worried about JoJo Siwa. Is someone making her dress like that? Oh, what's happening? But this last seizure I had, I was at the gym and I was on the treadmill, I was walking, like it was doing something, and I started to feel not so good. And I don't know if you guys know this, sometimes before a seizure or even a migraine, you get something called an aura, and it's different for everyone. I get a vertigo, some people see strange shapes or strange smells. Basically what I imagine Nicolas Cage gets when he gets a movie idea. Someone get a notepad! Picture this. Everyone's a triangle. And I smell pencils. Yeah, so I was on the treadmill, I wasn't feeling good, I decided to get off and I went over to lie down on the mats. And that was the last thing I remember doing, but the last thing I remember thinking was, I gotta go tell somebody something's wrong. And then I blacked out. And then later, I learned that someone told me, I stood up, I walked over to the front desk, they asked, can we help you, ma'am? And I dropped to the floor. They asked me if I needed help, and I dropped to the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, that is showing and not telling. So I had this seizure, and I had to go and see a new neurologist, which he wasn't great. So he comes in and he sits down and he goes right to his computer and he's just asking me questions and typing away. He probably looks at me 3 or 4 times. And I'm thinking, we could have done this over email. There's literally a sign in the exam room that says, I can't be on my phone while the exam is happening, and for all I know, he's on fucking Reddit. Look at me, I'm a person. But then he does look at me. He turns to me and he says, now I want to remind you that there's a possibility that you could suddenly and unexpectedly die from a seizure, and there's no way of knowing when or how that will happen. Wow, what a fucking burn. Have you ever been brutally roasted by your doctor? Also, shut the fuck up. I don't want my enemies to hear that. Can't know, I'm immortal. just something I have to live with. You know, I thought about getting a seizure dog, which would be a fun idea. I wouldn't want to train my own dog though, because it's pretty expensive, and I'd be afraid my dog would abandon me mid-seizure for deer poop. But guys, seizure dogs are so cool. They can smell a seizure before it's happened, and I can only smell if I've already farted. It's pretty crazy, right? Sometimes I think about what, if I was born in a different time or place, how my epilepsy would be perceived in another culture. Like ancient Greece, for example, epilepsy was seen as a sacred disease, which is awfully flattering. Jojo Siwa is a sacred disease. Anyway, the sacred disease where the gods would use, for example, my body as a surrogate to communicate with mortals. Well, one time I screamed during a seizure, so what the hell did you guys do? Also, being a woman during the Victorian England, they may see my seizures as a symptom of hysteria, which I wouldn't mind, because that just means they gotta give me a lot of hand jobs. Do you know that? Do you guys know that? That they used to treat hysteria with orgasms? I'd be like, doctor. I had 3 little episodes today. I think we gotta triple the dosage. There are a lot of things you can't do after you have a seizure. You can't drive, and you can't take a bath, which sucks because that's my favorite way to get a UTI. The bath, not driving. Guys are like, how's she driving? UTIs are the fucking worst. If I ever do die from a seizure, I hope I also have a UTI. That way I can drag it with me to hell. The first and worst UTI I ever had, I got from a nurse. Yeah, I'll tell you that story. I'll tell that story right now. After my second seizure, I was taken to the hospital, and they wanted to get a urine sample to see if I was pregnant, which means I had to pee in a cup. And if you have a vagina, you can't pee in a cup without also peeing on your hand. I can't pee in a fucking cup. I can pee in a bowl, but not this little shot glass you're giving me. So they asked for the sample, they asked for the sample. Guys, it's like if someone is pouring me tea, and they're a little nervous to tell me something, and the tea is getting everywhere, but I don't want to be impolite. They're offering me tea, and it's chamomile, and I love chamomile. The tea is my pee. Anyway. So they want the sample, and I was like, oh wait, hold on a second. I'm on my period. Is that going to in any way interfere with the urine sample? And the nurse, she looks at me with a face like, it's my first day. Let me go ask my manager. So she leaves and comes back, and she says, so we're gonna have to catheterize you. I'm glad you're on board. And I said, well, that is awfully dramatic. But sure, I'm game. I let this woman rob my bladder. And I'll be honest, we've gotten very close. And I'll level with you. I was that day years old when I found out where my urethra was. Well, every time I go, I'm not like, where's the spout? She put it in, and I was like, oh, stand corrected. So, yeah, she puts it in, and then she makes a wrong turn, which I didn't think was possible. It's a pretty straightforward road down there. And this bitch stabs me with the catheter. And this, mind you, this was all for seeing if I was pregnant. But if I was on my period, I wasn't pregnant! Right?
Right.
Oh my God. Also, at this time, I was 16, and so I was definitely a virgin. But they probably would not have believed me because I'm a woman and no one believes women. Believe me. Thank you guys. You can do it.